Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and today we're going to look at Fate Reforged set review part 3, and this is going to be the black cards that we'll be looking at specifically. Already up on the channel is part 1 and part 2, where we looked at the white and blue cards respectively, so please check those out when you get a chance. And over the next couple days, we'll get the rest out for you. So having said that, we'll go ahead and jump right in, and our first card is Alicia's Vanguard. It is a 1 black and 3 colorless 3/3 creature with dash. And Dash is a new mechanic that is now the Mardu mechanic in Fate Reforge, as opposed to Raid, which we saw in Kanzatark here. So basically the idea behind Dash is it's an alternative casting cost and allows you to power the creature out a turn earlier to get in for damage if there's an opening. And basically, as you can see on the card here, this particular card has a dash cost of one black and 2 colorless, and you may cast this spell for its dash cost. If you do, it gains haste and it's returned from the battlefield to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So 3/3 for a 4. Pretty good card, and with the dash ability tacked on to give it some extra versatility, it's a very strong card. Definitely going to play this in limited. I would draft it relatively highly in draft, and there may even be a place in the right aggro deck in standard for something like this, at least for the time being, until the format warps a little bit as we go forward. Ancestral Vengeance, 2 black, and this is an enchantment aura. The enchanted creature gets -1/-1, but when it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It's nice to get a +1/+1 counter, and there are cards where that matters. However, paying 2 black and then getting the counter and the -1/-1 ability isn't standing out to me, just mostly because -1/-1 isn't really dealing with a lot of the threats that need to be dealt with. If it was -2/-2 or even 0/2, that would mean a lot more, I think, and make this card more playable than it is currently. Right now, it probably wouldn't make my cut in limited. Archfiend of Depravity. It's 2 black and 3 colorless for a flying 5/4 creature, and at the beginning of each opponent's end step, that player chooses up to 2 creatures he or she controls, then sacrifices the rest. So yeah, this is a limited bomb. It's a 5/4 flyer for 5. You're going to play it. You're going to be pretty happy playing it in any limited deck. And as far as the ability goes, it's going to control some of the aggro decks that are out there. If you're dealing with a lot of small creatures, this is a great answer to that. And if there is an aggro deck out there in standard that becomes dominant, expect to see this guy at least in sideboards to help quell that. Next one is Battle Brawler, 1 black and 1 colorless, and he's a 2/2, but as long as you control a red or white permanent, Battle Brawler gets +1/+0 and has first strike. 2/2 for a 2 isn't as exciting in this environment, probably playable in limited. However, if you're playing one of the other 2 colors, red or white, yeah, you're going to play this guy because he could become a 3/2 first strike for 2. That's pretty economical and very strong. So beyond limited, you might not see him again unless there's a really strong aggressive strategy that involves black, but definitely in limited, he's going to be very good. Brutal Horde Chief, and this is a 1 black, 3 colorless, 3/3 creature. Whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. He also has the ability to pay 3 and 2 red or white, and creatures your opponent control block this turn if able, and you choose how these creatures block. So this is a fantastic, almost kind of lord, if you will, for the aggro deck, especially for those small white creatures that you see and the smaller red creatures that you see. So as long as you can get this guy into a deck, he's going to be a phenomenal part to that aggro strategy. Now, we could see him in standard if there are some aggro strategies, and typically when a new set comes out, for the first couple weeks of standard, that's kind of the go-to strategy for a lot of the players, is to go aggro until we get a better feel for what this set can do. So at least early on, this guy might see some standard play. Now, long term, maybe not, but definitely still a limited bomb. You're going to play him in limited and be pretty happy. Crux of Fate, 2 black and 3 colorless. This is a sorcery, and you choose 1, destroy all dragon creatures, or destroy all non-dragon creatures. And this is a conditional board wipe. If you're playing dragons, it's even better, and at the very least, it can sometimes be almost like spot removal to deal with a difficult dragon that you can't get rid of any other way. Excellent card. Yeah, it's going to see standard play. Definitely going to see some play in Commander, where folks will have dragon decks, and it's a good card in limited too, if nothing else to have as a panic button. Dark Deal, 1 black and 2 colorless for the sorcery. Each player discards all the cards in his or her hand, then draws that many cards -1. And this reminds me a little bit of Windfall, which was a blue card many years ago, where basically each player would discard their hands and draw that many cards. So this is that many -1. They tried to temper it a little bit, but these effects are still powerful. They can sometimes fuel combos. Now there's better ways to do that in the Eternal formats, so you're probably not going to see this getting legacy play. Could it make it into a modern combo deck that's digging for something? Possibly. Could it make it into a standard deck if combo continues to be a thing? I don't know. I don't know if that deck exists with that deck exists that wants to play black and do that type of thing. It's not quite a Jeskai Ascendancy card that I can see. What about limited? And I think that's the question here. Is this good in limited? Now, it's going to help your opponent just as much, or sometimes more than it's going to help you. So it becomes a little bit conditional. However, it does fuel out your delve strategies a little bit. So there is some potential, if you're going for a strong delve strategy, that this might be a good card for you. Diplomacy of the Wastes, 1 black and 2 colorless, and it's a sorcery. Target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. If you control a warrior, that player loses 2 life. So the 2 life piece isn't too big of a deal. It's a little bit of a bonus, and that's why you're paying the extra casting cost to get this effect up to 3. But this is still a very strong effect. You get to see your opponent's hand, and you get to basically blank a card from their hand. 1 casting cost when you look at something like a Thoughtseize is better than 3 for something like this, but I'm going to probably play this in my limited decks, and this could definitely see some play in standard, where it's important to see your opponent's hand and kind of see what they have going forward, so you know if you can make your move or not. Dowson Gloom, 1 black and 2 colorless. Dowson Gloom deals 2 damage to target creature and you gain 2 life. This I would play in limited. It's going to help you get rid of morphs or manifest creatures, and the life gain, not as consequential, but it's going to be a little bit of spot removal, and it's at instant speed, which is also very nice. Fearsome Awakening, 1 black and 4 colorless for the sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. If it's a dragon, put 2+1/+1 counters on it. These effects are always good. You're going into a graveyard, you're pulling a creature back, and in this particular case, it's only from your graveyard. And so there's some cards that do let you pull from other graveyards, so that's going to restrict it a little bit, especially from like a commander point of view and what have you. However, if you have that strategy where you want to reoccur creature, this is fantastic. It's going to go right in the battlefield. If you're playing the delve strategy where you're kind of milling yourself, this card could be fantastic as well to kind of recur those creatures and save you the time of having to cast them. And if it happens to be a dragon, well, that's fantastic. You also get a bonus there. So this is a good limited card. It might not want to be in every deck, but if you're playing some big creatures and you feel like you're going to be milling yourself to push out some delve, this is a fantastic card. Ghastly Conscription, 2 black and 5 colorless, and this is a sorcery. Exile all creature cards from target player's graveyard in a face-down pile. Shuffle that pile and manifest those cards. So keep in mind this is target player, so this could be your opponent's graveyard. You have the versatility of you're wiping out their graveyard, which does mean something in an environment with Delve. You're getting a number of 2/2 creatures for doing so, or you could fuel it by milling yourself and then going ahead and exiling creature cards to do this. Or late game, this could help you out with a board stall. So it is a little pricey, but it probably is worth putting one of into a limited deck. Now, obviously, you probably won't have more than one, being mythic, but yeah, I want to be sad to have one of these in my deck, especially if I have a delve strategy and I know late game is going to help me a little bit. Kind of sad if you draw it too early, but that's kind of the risk you take with cards like this. Grave Strength, 1 black and 1 colorless for the sorcery. Choose target creature. Put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Then put a +1/+1 counter on that creature for each creature card in your graveyard. This doesn't feel great to me. Yeah, of course, it'd be nice to get some +1/+1 counters, but it's just a little too conditional. You're milling 3, which isn't a bad thing if you're trying to mill yourself. However, you might not get any more effect out of it. So if you're really playing a strong delve strategy where that's important, then by all means. But other than that, I wouldn't even look at the whole +1 counter piece of this card, just because there's a good chance that's not going to pan out for you. Gert Mag Angler, 1 black and 6 colorless, and this is a 5/5 creature with Delve. This is a very strong limited card because it doesn't take long to throw a couple, maybe 2, 3 casting costs, instants or sorceries into your graveyard. Maybe you got a fetch land early on. So all of a sudden, this guy becomes pretty cheap for a 5/5, and your opponent has to find an answer very quickly. This card I like a lot, and I think is going to be huge and limited. I could even see this potentially in an aggro deck that makes a standard environment. Very, very good common. Hooded Assassin, 1 black, 2 colorless. He's a 1/2, and when he comes into play, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on him, or destroy target creature that was dealt damage this turn. And the first ability with the counter doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but destroy target creature that was dealt damage this turn is pretty good. It gives you a couple options. If you have a spell that's doing 1 or 2 damage to something, this can finish off a large creature. Or if it's post-combat and there's been blocking and you need to finish off a big creature or what have you. This is a pretty good card, so you just want to be mindful. This is a card you probably mostly want to play post-combat, but definitely a strong card for limited. Merciless Executioner, 1 black and 2 colorless. He's a 3/1, and when he enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature. So he's a little conditional. There might be great situations where you're getting a 3/1 for 3 and you're making your opponent lose a much better creature than you're losing. However, you don't always have that opportunity, and there's times where you might not have another creature out and you draw this guy, and that's not going to feel good. So a little too conditional. I'm probably going to steer clear of him in limited. Mardu's Shadow Spear, 1 black. When Mardu's Shadow Spear attacks, each opponent loses 1 life. And he's a 1/1, but he has the dash ability, which is going to cost 1 black and 1 colorless. But in this case, the dash ability is giving him a little bit of protection. You're putting him out, you're attacking for 1, you're dealing the 1 bonus damage, and then you're taking him back to your hand. So I don't know if this card is strong enough to really have an impact in the limited format the way it is now. I don't know if this would make my cut in most decks. I'd probably steer clear of this one. Mardu's Strike Leader, 1 black and 2 colorless. He's a 3/2, and whenever Mardu's Strike Leader attacks, put a 2/1 black warrior creature token onto the battlefield. He also has the dash ability, but this time the dash ability costs more, 1 black and 3 colorless. And again, that's kind of the protection piece to get him off the battlefield when it's not your turn, since he is able to give you these 2/1 tokens. So this is a very good aggressive card. He's a 3/2, so it's easy for him to get blocked even by a morph or a manifest creature, and you kind of lose him, but at least you get the token out of him. And there are cases where he will be great because he can get by and he can get in. If he's backed up with some good spot removal or even some board white removal like we saw earlier, he can be a really strong card in limited. Noxious Dragon, 2 black and 4 colorless for a 4/4 flyer, and when he dies, you may destroy target creature when converted mana costs 3 or less. Limited bomb, you're going to play it, and I think we've seen so far in the first 3 colors, there's been a dragon that's a 4/4 flyer with an ability that's been at the uncommon level, so this cycle it seems pretty fun for limited, and yeah, this is what you're looking to put in your black deck so that you can get some damage across and you have the evasion that you need, and eventually you might even be able to take another creature out. Orc Sure Shot is 1 black and 3 colorless, and he's a 4/2. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, target creature and opponent controls gets -1/-1 till end of turn. And this is great if you can power out a couple creatures, but 4/2, he's very fragile, and I don't know if you're going to get the effect out of him that you kind of wish or think you're going to get out of him. If you had some sort of token generator or something like that, that might be different. But really, I'm not going to play this guy probably in my limited decks and not going to draft him very highly. Palace Siege, 2 black and 3 colorless, and as this enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons, and this is an enchantment. If you choose Khans, at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. If you chose Dragons, at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. The Khans ability can be good, especially late game. You need some, basically it becomes card draw to pull these creatures back into your hand, so that's a good ability. And the Dragons portion to continually drain 2 life, that's good. Now if you're playing a multiplayer game like Commander, that ability might get you killed pretty quick, since you're going to affect everybody on the board. However, you're paying 5 for this enchantment. The effect you're getting back isn't as strong as some of the other enchantments that cost 5 that are doing this Cons versus Dragons concept. So this one I might not necessarily throw in my limited deck. It could be a 22, 23 if I'm looking for another playable. It's not horrible. I do like the 2 drain life, but you do have to take into account that you might have drained 2 life, but you took a turn to play this card, and meanwhile your opponent played a 5-drop creature that's taken 4 life from you a turn. Like one of those dragons. So it doesn't feel great to me, this one, unfortunately, because I do like some of the other versions of this in the cycle. Quasi High Priest, 1 black, and he's a 0/2. You can pay a black and a colorless and tap him to sacrifice another creature. Manifest the top card of your library. I always like sacrifice effects, and even when they're not on very strong creatures, this is something I always like to have in my deck if it's available to me. So basically, look at it this way: if you're in a situation where you're trading in combat, or somebody goes ahead and pulls a direct damage spell on one of your creatures, you get the value to sacrifice them, and then in this case, you get the manifest. There's cards like Act of Treason out there where you're stealing a creature, and instead of giving that creature back and then to turn, you can sacrifice it. These type of things I really love, and you usually can find some use for them in limited. Reach of Shadows, 1 black and 4 colorless. Destroy target creature that's 1 or more colors. And this is fantastic limited removal. It costs 5. It's going to get rid of almost anything. Obviously, you can't get rid of a Morph or Manifest creature until it flips. However, it's basically taking out everything else. There are a couple artifact creatures out there, but not a whole lot in this environment. So it's going to take out some of the best creatures. Fantastic card. You're going to play it every single time in limited. Sibsig Host, 1 black and 4 colorless. He's a 2/6, and when he enters the battlefield, each player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So it's fueling your delve strategy again. 2/6 is a blocker, but as we've kind of seen, it's going to muck up the board a little bit, but probably not do a whole lot for you. So if you need that, if you're playing a long-term grindy strategy in limited, then you probably want to throw this guy in. But other than that, he probably doesn't have much of a home. Sibsig Muck Draggers, 1 black and 8 colorless, and he does have Delve. He's a 3/6, and when he enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So he's a very expensive, albeit with Delve, Gravedigger, but he's bigger. He's a 3/6. So again, this is that same strategy as we saw in the previous card. If you're trying to play that long, grindy game, and you're trying to get these big creatures out, and you're trying to hit these great Delve spells, then he's what you want to kind of muck up the board for you. But other than that, most decks probably don't want him. Soulflayer, 2 black and 4 colorless, and he also has a Delve ability. He's a 4/4, and if a creature card with flying was exiled with Soulflayer's Delve ability, Soulflayer has flying. The same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. And this is a fun card, and there might be some implications for this in EDH. I would love to make this work in a limited game. I don't know how much real value I'd get, but you know what? You're paying 6 mana, and you have the Delve ability to make that cheaper for a 4/4. If nothing else, that's pretty good value, and maybe you can get rid of a flyer and give it some evasion, and I'd just be happy with that. And anything else that happens to happen, I think would be a bonus. So I'd like this card a lot in limited. I'd play it every time, draft it relatively high. Sultai Emissary, 1 black and 1 colorless. When Sultai Emissary dies, manifest the top card of your library, and he's a 1/1. So I like this a lot too. It's not quite as good, but reminiscent of the blue card that we saw where you paid 2 for a 1/1, and when it died you got to draw a card. Here's the same sort of concept. You're paying 2 for a 1/1. You're getting some early value out of the card, hopefully, but when it does finally die, you're going to go ahead and get a 2/2 creature and manifest, and possibly be able to flip that into a larger card if it is a creature. So this is value, and I do like this, and I would definitely play this in limited. Sultai Runemark, 1 black and 2 colorless, and this is the black aura in the cycle. Enchant creature, it gets +2/+2, and if you control a green or a blue permanent, it also gets Death Touch. If you watch part 1 and part 2, you know how I feel about these, and this is innate kind of losing card advantage when you play this, and it's really easy to get 2 for 1, and it also doesn't guarantee the fact that it's going to get Death Touch, considering you need to have a green or blue permanent in play. So, not one of my favorite cards. I'd steer clear of this one. Tessiger's Cruelty, 1 black and 5 colorless. For the sorcery, it has Delve, and each opponent discards 2 cards. So, uh, I think this might be a little better if it was 2 cards at random. Of course, that'd probably be too good. Discarding is a powerful ability, though, and if you have the extra flexibility in your limited deck where you think you're going to have enough Delve available in your graveyard to shoehorn this in, I wouldn't be opposed to playing it, because when it works, it works well. And if you can cast it early, it can really disrupt your opponent's plans, and sometimes even win a game for you. Not always going to be good. If you draw this guy late, you're not going to feel real good when your opponent's basically playing off the top of their deck. But it has its place. I don't know if it would make a lot of cuts for me if I'm building a sealed pool or if I'm building a draft deck. In most cases, I feel as if I would probably cut this card unless I was really desperate for playables. Tessiger, the Golden Fang, and he's 1 black and 5 colorless. He's a 4/5 with Delve, and he has the additional ability to pay 2 and then 2 green or blue, and put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, then return a non-land card of an opponent's choice from your graveyard to your hand. And there's some folks that really like this card. There's a value piece to him. I do like the fact that he's a 4/5 for 6 with Delve. I would probably play him just for that. As far as his ability goes, I just never feel great about playing abilities where I'm giving my opponent a choice, because you're getting the worst possible outcome when your opponent's making the choice for you. So as good as it seems or sounds on paper, these type of things, it's still a card. It's still some value, but it's not the same as, say, drawing a card, because instead of randomness, you're intentionally going to get the thing that's going to help you the least. And your opponent has more information about their cards or their game than you have, so they should be able to make a pretty good decision of what's going to be the least helpful to you. So that ability just doesn't do anything for me. Not a limited game, like I said. I want a 4 or 5, and I can probably cast him in most cases for 3 or 4 mana. Yeah, you know what? I'm probably going to play him, but I don't know about the ability. And our last card is Typhoid Rats, and it's 1 black for a 1/1 Death Touch creature, and this is a reprint. This is a tried and true proven Magic card. It's done great. It will muck up the board if you're looking to do that. It's also a great strategy to get in some damage and eventually force your opponent to trade with it to get rid of it, or just keep it to block a larger creature and trade with it. So really strong card. You're going to play it in limited all the time pretty much. So and that concludes the black Fate Reforged set review. So like I said, we'll be getting the other colors out to you soon. If you haven't seen part 1 and part 2, feel free to check those out. And again, we're kind of a very new channel, and we're trying to grow and do some different things. So if you have any ideas of things you'd like to see going forward from us, please let us know. So thanks a lot, and have a great day.